Oh, hello. Today, I would like to give you an overview of some of the best practices that the MBON Multiple Program or the Marine Biodiversity Observation Network Multiple Program of the Americas has been implementing in collaboration with the colleagues listed here, of course, but also with several international organizations like the Ocean Biogeographic Information System, OBIS, AmeriGeo, the Global Ocean Observing System, Marine Geo of the Smithsonian Institution, and the Ocean Teacher Global Academy led by the IOC UNESCO. This animation shows you the number of occurrence records of mollusks and plants as examples within depths of 50 meters since the 1700s in the Americas, curated by OBIS. The color on the hexagons represents the cumulative number of records since then. And from this, it is clear that both the east and west coast of the Americas and over this broad latitudinal range have or show unequal amounts of occurrence records, and that there is a noticeable geographic and taxonomical imbalance in data coverage in the region, right? And when we look at the cumulative number of years of occurrence observations for all taxa together, and this I'm talking about mollusks, plants, echinoderms, and others, we know that biodiversity observations are also temporally uneven. For example, very often these records are not intercomparable because we're collected using very different methods that targeted a particular taxonomic group of interest. Most importantly, there is a systematic lack of sustained time series observations, and thus our ability to detect changes in coastal communities throughout the region is quite impaired. To address this challenge, the MBON Multiple Program seeks to build a community of practice dedicated to building a framework to understand how and why marine biodiversity is changing over time and space, by basically identifying biodiversity baselines and detecting trends in change in biodiversity in biological communities. And the way the program intends to do that is through capacity building in areas like enhancing our ability to create knowledge on biodiversity and how biodiversity relates to ecosystem services, to coordinate biodiversity monitoring that is currently disaggregated and working independently, with a very strong focus on developing capabilities for sharing data and best practices. And a critical component of this is integrating in situ observations with satellite remote sensing data so that observations on the ground can be scaled to broader temporal and spatial domains. The program has developed field data collection protocols for rocky intertidal zones and sandy beaches that are currently applied for biodiversity and community composition surveys at localities highlighted with red dots on this map. In several of these localities, surveys have been conducted repeatedly, and so we're now beginning to get a sense of how these communities have changed, at least over the past few years. Field protocols developed by the network are now available for public access to the community on the Ocean Best Practice System, for example. As part of the Multiple program, the partners of, or the Multiple now partners with the Ocean Teacher Global Academy and OBIS to conduct workshops on, for example, the field protocols that I just talked about, and on data science applications for data analysis, mapping and visualization, and how to integrate satellite remote sensing data with in situ observations. An important element of the network is that it shares the data openly as soon as it is collected via OBIS, and therefore from there it can be utilized as raw materials for the creation of or the development of essential biodiversity variables, and essential ocean variables. Consistent field monitoring efforts have now allowed us to detect major changes in rocky shore communities of, for example, Peninsula Valdez in Patagonia in Argentina, where percent coverage of mussel beds have declined drastically since 2018, possibly as a result of combined effects of unusual wind, tide, and air temperature conditions, coinciding with a heat wave event observed during the last year's austral summer. The network is trying to understand what happened to these mussel beds, specifically by applying or testing machine learning techniques developed by the CoralNet group and their software to quickly detect large changes of functional groups in these habitats with minimal human effort. The MBON Pol2Pol has also developed several manuals and data entry templates that are interoperable and compatible with open access data taxonomy quality control tools, such as WORMS, and open data sharing platforms like the integrated publishing toolkit of the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, which basically allows to push Darwin Core compliant datasets into OBIS and GBIF simultaneously. Specifically, the how-to manual has step-by-step instructions on how to align a data table, for example, following Darwin Core schema and upload the data to the GBIF IPT quite easily. Since 2018, more or less at the beginning of the MBON Pol2Pol program, we have carried out 2 workshops gathering coastal ecologists from 12 countries, during which participants have designed and agreed on field protocols, but also have been trained in the various data science tools that we're promoting. These in-person workshops have been very effective in implementing data sharing practices following the Darwin Core format through the region, and thus allowing the influx of multiple observations into OBIS quite quickly. Now, it's a third workshop was organized to be carried out in Colombia, in Santa Marta, at the INVEMAR last May, but due to the current COVID restrictions, we had to postpone it until possibly early next year. The plan for this particular workshop is to develop a set of indicators of biodiversity change in coastal communities based on, for example, applications like machine learning, imagery analysis for detecting changes in broad taxonomic functional groups, or things like learning to access and use satellite seascape and other remote sensing variables to characterize environmental conditions at places where surveys are being carried out, and test, as I said before, machine learning methods to detect broad changes in these coastal communities in an automated fashion based on machine learning. Now, in collaboration with colleagues from the University of Porto, who have provided miniaturized temperature loggers, the Pol2Pol is now tracking thermal conditions at high temporal resolution at the sites highlighted with the red dots on this map. As a result of this collaboration, the Pol2Pol is now contributing to the Atlantic-wide collaboration long-term temperature and biodiversity observation network funded by the FLAD, which is the Portuguese American Foundation for Development, that intends to expand observational capacity for thermal habitat and biodiversity too throughout the Atlantic Basin, and understand really what the effects of climate change are on coastal communities in the region. An important component of the Pol2Pol program is enhancing access to satellite data collected at monitoring sites and facilitate analysis of time series records for variables like sea surface temperature, chlorophyll, and perhaps dynamic seascapes and others by accessing our website, which allows users to download daily satellite records as a simple comma-separate variable table to examine environmental variability and change at their localities and more broadly. So since the beginning of the Multiple program, we have been able to successfully push over 15,000 new records of rocky shores and sandy beaches in the Americas more or less quickly, and this is something that we're very proud of at this point. And this is not including other data sets that have been incorporated into the OBIS platform as part of other networks like the long-term ecosystem research program in Brazil and in other sites that are not being reported as part of the Multiple program. But anyhow, these training workshops have been able to successfully get this ball rolling in the region. And as a set of a few recommendations for similar efforts in other parts of the world, if someone wanted to start a multiple program somewhere else, we would tell them to ensure high representation of early career professionals that can meet as often as possible through workshops, webinars, or telecons. It's quite difficult to do under the current circumstances, of course. Also encourage network members to submit proposals to their home countries so that these efforts are not supported by a single entity. Develop interesting case studies on things like, for example, macroecology, the kind of thing that we're doing under the Multiple to stimulate involvement of network participants, showcase the value of sharing data for people to advance their careers, make data sharing a top criteria and priority for participating in network activities, facilitating exchange of students among groups, and encouraging participants to actively engage with decision makers in their home countries. And with that, I finalize this presentation, and I appreciate your attention, and I am more than happy to take your questions now. Thank you.